Welcome back to the Tectonic Takes podcast. We're getting through a roller coaster part of the season, wins and losses. No semblance of consistency in results, but more consistency in performances, just not translate to results. And we got three of us here to talk to you today to talk about this game. Myself, Ivan, and we've got Saz. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Sorry to unmute myself. Yeah, I'm doing well. We can get into the game later. It was interesting, but also like I feel like a little not memorable. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's a good word to describe this game. We've had some frustrating losses to LAFC, particularly on the road, but this one it was a more valiant performance, an admirable performance, but still not the performance that we were looking for, especially given the context of them being involved in the CONCACAF Champions Cup. Abram, how you doing?
I'm doing good. I have my Wendy's lemonade over here, so anytime you have Wendy's lemonade is a good day. Um, yeah, having a good time.
Yeah, lemonade in general, pretty good, especially with this springtime weather we're enjoying here. And with this game, this is always a tough game for San Jose Earthquakes to find success in. Ever since LAFC joined the league, they've done very well when they've been hosting us in Southern California. But this is a very interesting LAFC team, still trying to get into first gear in MLS. Of course, as many teams do when they are involved in CONCACAF Champions Cup, whether they get knocked out or they go further, they have to cope with rotation, and MLS's restrictive roster rules does not give them as many options as, say, the Liga MX teams have. So anyway, LFC were able to roll out a bit more of a usual lineup compared to what they had a week ago against Houston. I think part of it was that they had been eliminated by Inter Miami in the battle of the two Golden Boys for MLS franchises, anyway, and they want to get back on the front foot. So Hugo Lloris in net. They had the back three of Long, Chanot, and Segura. They had Sergi Palencia in their right wing back slot, along with Ryan Hollingshead on the opposite side. They had Igor Jesus and Mark Delgado in midfield. In front three of Ordaz, Olivier Giroud, and Denny Buwanga. And the big stories for LAFC had been the goalless start until this game for Denny Buwanga and the continued struggles of Olivier Giroud. And while the latter didn't really end in this match in terms of getting on the score sheet, he technically was a big factor in the would-be game-winning goal with his initial shot. So, what do you make of LAFC's two-star forwards and how they've been able to cope with Major League Soccer so far, Saz?
I actually thought Giroud had a really good game. I think that was I don't want to say vintage Giroud because obviously not, but I think that is what they expected from him. And if you rewatch the game, like his hold up play was phenomenal. It's like what we had with Benteke last week, but like honestly leveled up. Because with Benteke, they were just like throwing it across. He was heading. He was able to run in, dive in, draw Romney most of the time, one of our defenders, out, and then he was able to quickly play it out wide and then create the space. I thought he was really, really good. I don't even like LFC, but just as like a pure soccer like fan, that was like really, really cool to watch. I thought he had a phenomenally underrated game. Uh, Bwanga's fast. That's all I got for that
Yeah,
one.
and what I mean by Buwanga's life in MLS up to this point, he's been here for several seasons now, is that this felt more like the start of the season that we expected Buwanga to have when he first moved to Major League Soccer. He was able to adjust pretty seamlessly for someone with no prior North American soccer experience, and he inexplicably unable to score a goal this deep into a season. It feels unheard of, particularly with this history of LAFC. And that did attribute a lot of their struggles, particularly in Major League Soccer play, when you have someone who can score 20, 30 goals any given season, then 20% of the season is passed without goal contribution. This could be the one that opens the floodgates. But for all of Olivier Giroud's struggles have kind of become the stuff of memes across social media, this seemed like a little bit of a get right game for him, and we'll see what that means for us as San Jose Earthquakes fans if we should be concerned. But ultimately, Giroud is Giroud. Abram, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see the second half, and from what I saw the first half, I think the second half is probably where he's shown the most, obviously being involved with the winning goal. Um, but I mean, I'm not too surprised. It was only a matter of time, given the quality he has. You don't win the World Cup by being lucky. You get a little bit lucky, but it's more than that. He's a quality player. Just maybe took him some time to acclimate to the quality of his teammates, or just soccer is a game where you have to think a lot, and if you're heading on the right space, it's going to really affect how you play. So it's that fragile. It's unfortunate that he did find his footing against us. That wasn't my favorite, but and the goal that Bouanga scored, you could say that it was kind of given to him in a way with how that goal ended up transpiring. So I'm not gonna be like, oh, Bouanga is crazy good. He did give us a really hard time, but that goal wasn't necessarily the indication of his impact on the game, which was great. I don't want to belittle that.
Yeah, I agree. And with those two good players in their forward line, this is a attacking unit that was short one Jeremy Abobasi, which we'll talk about him and his absence in a moment. You can't really afford to make too many mistakes, and you need a little bit of luck, and that just didn't happen. And you could also argue that there was an element of misfortune for San Jose Earthquakes with the Sergi Palencia goal, not just the fact that that was his first ever MLS goal, which for me I found that hard to believe, but that was true. Sergi Palencia, he's a very skillful, technically gifted player for that position, and he doesn't really score or take too many shots, but maybe he should more often. So there's that element to it as well. But that was the main injury loss for LAFC. No Jeremy Abobasi, so we lost a little bit of that storyline, figuring out how he was going to cope with this matchup. First time playing San Jose Earthquakes in this new era of his career with LAFC. I'm not sure if you've looked at the schedule, but this is the obligatory trivia question for the day. When do we play LAFC at PayPal Park? Abram, you take a crack at it, please.
Let me see. Let me
If
think
you get the
about
month
it.
right, that's cool too.
Let me think about it and not look at this schedule that I have in front of me.
In that case, I'll take a guess because I'm gonna
Okay,
say,
Saz, thank you for playing honest.
yeah, I'm gonna say I have 2 months. I'm gonna either say July or September.
Okay, I'll let you pick between those two. One of them is correct.
Uh, I want to say July because I feel like we play them in the summer, but I'm gonna go September to the fact because this is a trivia question.
And that is correct. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be a while. September 13th is when we'll hopefully get to have that rematch with Jeremy Abobasi. He is expected to return from a leg injury in the end of this month, but you never know. Something else could happen. We hope it doesn't. We want to play against Jeremy Abobasi just because he means a lot to the club, and it's always cool when players do return. It does bring in a lot of emotions, and one of the biggest things that we remember about important games is the emotional side of soccer or any sport. And it is interesting that we're not going to see LAFC again until practically the end of the season, and yet we're going to have our first rematch of the season coming up this weekend with Sporting Kansas City. That will complete the home and away series with that. Now we'll get into the San Jose Earthquakes lineup. There was no changes, of course, as you would expect, coming off a 6-1 loss. Saz, so the main tactical change maybe perhaps in the starting 11, at least based on some websites' interpretations of the formations, you had either Nico Shakiris as the attacking midfielder, occasionally as a winger. How did you view Shakiris' role in the shape for the 65, 70 minutes he was on the pitch?
I think it was just Hernan's role where
Yeah.
it's like I'm sort of an attacking mid, but I'm gonna press like a striker. It's kind of what we saw with Montero in his first stint around here. It's just like the way we press, but that was when the ball was more in their half. But they when they came back and depending on the runs being made, it was kind of a free flowing who's on next situation between LaRue and Harks. It did seem Harks was maybe trying to stay back a little bit more. Um, just knows his role a little more, and then LaRue was kind of in the middle, so it did create that kind of like staggered three. But there were times where like one of them would be like all the way back or all the way wide, and then they would rotate through. But that's mostly what I noticed from it. I
Yeah.
actually like the idea of them switching through, and then one of them really trying to stay defensive. So that, and I think it showed. It worked pretty well because if you look at the goals this time around, it wasn't so much like a hey we lost a runner or we just were caught lacking. It was like a oh some mistake led to this then.
Yeah, and I think just a word of caution for anyone that uses like FootMob or any other website, you should always double check, triple check formations on there anyway. But I think right now, a decade ago, it was we assumed every MLS team was a 4-2-3-1 formation. I think right now it's just we're trying to piece together how these teams are a 3-4-3. That just seems like the comfortable formation for MLS in particular. And it does result in some players being in weird spots. I think I saw Toronto the other day. Fernando Bernardeschi was listed as like a false nine or something. Maybe that's the case because obviously I don't watch a lot of Toronto FC, but just some things to think about. And of course, we watch the game, but sometimes you look at the formation even for a game you watch and you're wondering, wait, am I watching this wrong? And so, just a little bit of a quirk there. And I think with Shakiris and Pellegrino in particular, it's an interesting battle that who knows how long it's going to last because Hernan Lopez is expected to have a soon return. But what the results of that battle for playing time is going to look like in terms of maybe one of you gets to be the first option off the bench when we need a goal, the other gets to be a second. Because I think these last few games, we've seen Shakir's play very well, but we've also seen Pellegrino start to turn up the intensity. Is that fair to say, Saz?
That's fair to say. I think it's actually an easy solution just based off the substitution patterns we've seen. It really seems well. First of all, we weren't even seeing Nico, right? Um, Nico is definitely seems more so when we need that midfield substitution, even though it has been Mark Anthony K coming in. So if you were to just like dissect where they go, I'd say Nico more like a hey, we need a little bit more running here, need a little more creativity, splashing forward. Pellegrino's been the hey, we're down a goal, we want another goal, or hey, let's strike because we think that you can hold up the play and maybe hopefully start scoring or assisting. So I think that's when we'll how we'll see each one rotate through.
And sadly, the big storyline in the first half, because it wasn't the most inspiring first half you'd ever watch, is the concussion protocol substitution of Daniel. And this is a question I'll pose to you, Abram, first, and then Saz. Aside from Daniel, what's a goalkeeper that you associate with being injury prone, missing a lot of games throughout multiple seasons?
I'm gonna think a little bit about that. I think I had one in mind, but I can't. I mean, it's not really a common thing, you know.
Yeah, it's not.
They're not always getting injured, but it seems to happen to us a lot. I had someone in mind, and then I was explaining how I was going to think about it, and then I totally forgot about that guy. But no, it's definitely something that's like this happens to Daniel more than it really should.
Says, can you think of someone?
I mean, maybe outside of Czech really, really early in his career. Um, I can't really. No, goalkeepers are usually as violent as the position might be, right? It's rare that Courtois would be someone I would definitely think actually gets injured a lot. That's the only one I could think of. But other than that, I don't think it's a regular injured position. Usually, it's like maybe get one or two here or there. But yeah,
And my choice would probably be Manuel Neuer, but less so that he's injury prone. Of course, he's played at a very high level for now, approaching 2 decades. But when he does miss time, it's usually for something really strange, and it makes headlines, like a skiing trip. It's like with
yeah,
baseball pitchers, you do not want them operating knives or
yeah.
cooking whatsoever. For soccer players, you do not want them doing any sort of extreme sports or hiking or bungee jumping, skiing.
No, for sure. Actually, in a lot of professional sports contracts, you have to sign that you will not go like jet skiing. You will not do that. A lot of them do it anyways. I think Neuer is more of like, hey, I've been playing like at a professional level, or at least in a setting since I was like 13 or 14, and now I'm like 40 something, and like I've gone to the final or played most games of every single season, and now my body's just father time is caught up.
at the risk of getting even further off track, it's worth mentioning anytime we talk about Manuel Neuer, but he voiced a minor character in the German version of Monsters University. So that's a fun little trivia fact for you. A tectonic trivia take.
I didn't know that. That's actually really, really cool. Yeah.
Was it Manic? I was under the impression it was Sully. I thought he fully was Sully. Fully Sully. I could be totally wrong about that. We'll have to Google that to figure out who it was. But he did the German, dubbing of it.
I believe it was the first tour guide. You know how in the tour guide scene in Monsters University, they're all names that end in A, like J, Faye, whatever,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then,
Okay,
yeah, it's the first tour guide that's all peppy, typical college vibes.
sure. Yeah. I always tell people that guy was super interesting.
Yeah, so a man of many talents. Daniel certainly is talented, but unfortunately, this is now once again a situation where we are concerned about his health. You got to take concussions very seriously in sports, and this wasn't even the only concussion injury of the game. I'm trying to remember who else from LAFC had to be taken off. I believe it might have been, was it Delgado says?
I actually don't remember mostly because I don't associate myself with LAFC, but I do want to confirm that it was the character is called Frank McKay. It's the guy who voiced John Krasinski's character.
Ah, there you go. So, yeah, that is an unfortunate part of the game. It was either Chanel or Delgado. It was one of those two. Don't get subbed off too often when they do play. They play very integral positions on the defensive structure for LAFC. So, yeah, you just hope you never see that when you're watching a soccer game, and it happened twice. And with backup goalkeepers, because of how rare, as we established, that injuries are for the position, you don't expect to play a backup goalkeeper that much unless you have a designated cup backup goalkeeper, which most MLS teams usually don't. Because of the budgeting and the roster construction, usually a steep drop off between a starting MLS goalkeeper and then the backup. Um, and with Earl Edwards Jr., he's been around the league a lot, but I can't really remember if there was a point where he was a starting goalkeeper in MLS. So we saw a lot of our goalkeepers last season, many of which didn't play that well. Your Yarbas, your Jacob Jacksons, but I feel like this is a situation where if you're thinking about long-term construction of the squad, would it have hurt to have kept maybe a Jacob Jackson just for being a younger, similar quality goalkeeper? But, it's his first game. Earl Edwards Jr., he doesn't play a lot in his previous stops, and then this one, just a tough showing for him. Any thoughts on him getting thrust into action, Saz?
I was looking at the thing. I do think it was Delgado, but just get back to that as well. It is going to be a real hot take. And I understand what I'm saying. Like, I understand what I'm about to say. If we take away the two mistakes he had, which directly led to the goals, I actually thought it was okay. Like, I thought like he made some decent saves. He came out like he didn't really have too much to do. Okay presence. Maybe not as much game time. They were describing him as like a physical freak. Like he has always been like really big and really athletic for his size, and like he did kind of low-key look like a football player, like American football player out there. I think it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, you would hope the backup comes in and does well. The best I can think of this is Liverpool, and I'm blanking on the Irish guy's name that came in for Allison, but like he was
Kelleher.
Yeah. He was like. Yeah, people were looking at me like, "Yo, Allison, like you don't need to come back. Like, take your time."
Abram,
Like,
can you pronounce his first name?
I don't know his first name.
Kawimi.
Oh,
Kawini. Okay.
It's Kamin Kelleher. I think it's like the first part of his name is super Irish and has like three vowels back to back.
Yeah.
I believe it's Kamin Kelleher. I think
Yeah,
I just pronounced it three different times, but I
I've
just
only
wanted
heard
to see
his.
someone else take a stab at it.
I've only heard his name mentioned on like English Premier League podcasts, and they always say Kelleher. So I had no idea what his first name was.
Yeah, but yeah, I think we'd all hope for that. And then, I mean, if you realistically look at our lineup over the last couple of years, I'll go all the way back to JT being our main starter once Vega was out, because that was the dark days. Matt Persano is he just retired. What that is like a career of what could be, because I truly believe Matt was a MLS starting caliber keeper for us. And then he moved to Daniel, and JT obviously had proven himself. He'll make the occasional mistake every 3 to 7 games, right? But if Daniel really got hurt for an extended amount of time and JT obviously didn't have the leg injury, you look at that and you're like, oh, yeah, sure, I have JT in there. That's another starter in there. Um, and I think we had so many come in after that, and then we were like, okay, we don't want any. Then we shipped them all out. We're like, all right, Daniel's going to be fine, and now he's out. So I think give Edwards some shot. We'll see if how his confidence is. It's tough. It is like the worst position because it's like you cannot afford a mistake. You make one mistake and it's a goal. Like it is so unforgiving. Like, that's why I said like take away those 2 moments. I didn't think he was like terrible. I thought his positioning was all right. I thought he made some good decisions here or there. But you obviously can't just be like, oh, kick the ball right at them and they went down and scored, or he parried it right to them and they scored. The parry, I feel like the one where he parried it was a little unfortunate, if we're going to be completely honest, because I feel like the first save was all right. I forget if he did something before that led to it. The second one, straight up, like he just had a bad moment.
Yeah, the positive of this situation is that there is a realistic possibility he will be starting the U.S. Open Cup game, regardless of whether we're playing a USL Championship team, El Farolito, if they pull off another madness and knock out Sacramento Republic, which we're all rooting for them to do. Uh, Now he has a little bit more minutes in MLS game, and that would bode well. I know that the lineups regarding the U.S. Open Cup is a touchy subject for the San Jose Earthquakes, who we not fare well in the U.S. Open Cup in the last few seasons. We've been knocked out by lower league oppositions, be it Sacramento Republic or Monterey Bay, but that's one of the few opportunities to start a backup goalkeeper. If Daniel's healthy, I would want Daniel to start. Obviously, everyone would want that. But some rotation is always going to be expected. You just cannot start your best 11 players 3 games in 7, 8 days. It just doesn't work out that well. It doesn't usually happen. So that's going to be something that we do have to get used to. Now we have a better idea of how that's going to look. And his parries did lead to the chances that Sergi Palencia's laser and then Danny Bouanga cleaning up what Olivier Giroud started. Those were pretty much the big moments of the game until the end of the game, leading into 11 minutes of stoppage. We had Espinosa's banger.
Did you want? Did you ask me to talk about it?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't get to see it live. I was celebrating my birthday as we were watching a movie, but I did get the notifications and I watched it before this. It looked really nice. Unfortunately, it's hard to call it a banger when it's a deflection, and that's really unfortunate. When I first saw it, I was like, "Dang, that's a nice goal," you know. And it was unfortunate that happened so late. And it was like the comeback is really difficult to have in the 94th minute. The game did go on for a while. So there was a chance, and it did invigorate the team. Hopefully, again I didn't get to see the second half, but no, I mean he's the guy who's not going to give up, right? He's our captain, Christian Espinosa. He's being called La Máquina right now, and the Discord is calling him La Chispa, which means the spark. And I think he holds true to that name. It was a great shot. A lot of players might have let it roll a little bit more and shot it with their right because they're more comfortable with it. But SB knows that he just has to get a shot off quickly, and whatever happens, happens, right? And it worked out in his favor.
Yeah, I think one thing we haven't even mentioned yet, and I guess I'm the only one who watched both halves, so we're stuck with my horrible opinion. So sorry for anyone else who hasn't listened to this, but I actually thought it was like you take away the score of the game, and big caveat, right? It was a close back and forth game. It was rather even. Like there'd be spells here or there. I didn't think we looked too out of place. I felt like we were giving it back and forth. We had some opportunities inside the box. They had some opportunities inside the box. We made some good saves. Lloris made some good saves. I'm actually overall like, not that there's like such thing as like a good loss, but if there were, like, it was a good loss. Like up until maybe the last couple minutes of like the like 15, 20 minutes of added time we had, like it was a really solid performance. And funny enough, I thought this was one of Christian's worst games so far this season. I feel like early on he just wasn't connecting passes well. I don't feel like his touch was quite there. But yeah, the spark, right, comes and scores. Um, and obviously, I think it was a great goal deflection. Obviously, put the little asterisk on it, but a goal's a goal. And I think this leads me, unless someone else wants to talk about something else, this leads me into like a problem I've been seeing so far. How do we get Christian Espinoza more involved? Because I feel like that's been the big problem of the season. We're trying to get so many people on the field at once. And I get it's hard. You got to manage Joseph. You got to manage Chicho. Neither of them are going to want to sit. I personally think Christian in this system might be better in a. I get what he offers, right? And I get that he's the one that's having to sacrifice, but I think he might even be better as the secondary striker or a second striker in the system. Not by himself, but if we have like two strikers, because he runs down. But he offers us so much on the wing, too. So being able to mix that up and make them have to deal with multiple things is also another thing. So there's pros and cons to everything. But what I can say is in the games, especially where we've been struggling, a bright spot for me has been Christian Espinoza. He rarely gets the ball, but when he does, he's driving it direct, he's driving it forward, and it does cause a collapse of the defense. And that's really been the highlight of a San Jose team the last 5 years when we haven't been doing too well. You talk to any team, they're like, yeah, but you guys got Christian. Like, we don't feel too confident. You never know when he's going to run down the wing. Yeah, he just can't stop Christian. Like, when I lived in Seattle for the last year, that's all they would talk about is like, dude, Christian. Dude, what's Christian like? Like, this, that, the other. Like, that is a name.
Do you still have any contact with your Seattle friends so whenever we lose a game, we can use them to hype us up again?
I have a couple friends out there, so yeah.
Okay. And I'm trying to think. If you're trying to accommodate Espinoza, I'm not sure if second striker, but maybe you have him as like a right winger, and then you do go with the pure 3-4-3. So you have either Martinez or Chicho in the other wing spot, and then you have a natural striker there that's going to be one of the best in the league.
I got even a hotter take. You put Joseph on the bench.
All
um,
right.
you get 60 minutes of a really solid Chicho, and you put Joseph in, who's coming off an injury. Now, this doesn't have to be every game, right? But I think I speak for most people when we saw. Now, I think Preston Judd's had some of his best games for us recently, and I think Asuni Buddha has, like, since the Monterey trade, become a whole new person. Like, has elevated his game so much. But there is a drop off from Buddha, Judd, Pellegrino to then Christian, Chicho, Joseph. In a big game like LAFC, sure, throw them in. And like you want to get a rhythm, you want to get a system, get used to it. It's a long season though. Like it's a really long season. Like we technically could have lost every single game now, and still not easily, but still not too difficultly make the playoffs if we then go on a run. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but if we go on a run, like we're in the playoffs, like so many teams will make the playoffs. So resting our guys every once in a while and not having to throw them all, because I'm kind of worried, especially when Open Cup comes, if we end up playing some of our star guys, and I think we'll play the kids, but come July, come August, when we get those like big bursts of like sometimes 2 a week games, how are we gonna fare, especially with a lot of these guys? I mean, Christian just turned like 30. When I saw that, my heart sunk. I'm like, oh, is she the young 20-year-old who just came from Spain with us still? Oh my god. And a lot of guys are coming off injuries. MLS, the travel is ridiculous too. Like
Yeah.
people don't realize half of the week is spent traveling.
Yeah.
It feels like.
No, like sometimes they go 2 or 3 days early. Not three. Like
Yeah.
they go early. They don't just show up on game day.
Yeah,
You
some of
know.
these places play on turf, practice on turf. Like I get they're professional athletes. It's a lot. It is a lot.
Yeah. I also can I say we are not talking about Hernan Lopez, who is going to come back and is a DP, is also going to want to play. So you can switch things around, and you could, if you were to move Hernan Lopez onto the left, which Ian did a little bit. You could have a 4-2 uh, 4-2-2-2. You know what I'm saying? Or a 4-4-2, but with the wingers a little bit more advanced, and you could have her on the left, Espinosa on the right, and both the striker that we have. But then you don't have a 10, and this league, it's like 10 is super effective in Pokemon terms. 10 is just like wrecking everyone.
Yeah, you need a 10 to break down a lot of the more compact teams. Think about your Colorado Rapids, your Austins, those types of teams that are going to pack in deep. Houston Dynamos. Not necessarily that they're going to park the bus for 90 minutes, but they're very comfortable out of possession. Going back to the wing back situation that could happen if you move Espinoza further advanced. So on the left, I think that it's looking like this is going to be Vitor Costa's spot to lose. I think that he's playing well lately. So Jamar Ricketts will probably have to serve as his backup there. But then the right wing back role, if Espinoza's moved further up, you have to trust in a Nick Lima who has occasionally not made the squad, has barely played, usually on the bench. And then your other option would be someone who's barely featured at all this season, Paul Marie. So that's who we would like to see. Now that Nico Shakir is getting his game time, okay, cool, we've solved that issue. But now, okay, how can we get Paul Marie some minutes? I guess Paul Marie could be a prime candidate to play in the U.S. Open Cup game. The question I would then offer you both: would you take losing U.S. Open Cup in the first round we play if it guaranteed that we finish in the playoffs? Abram.
Mm, it's I'm gonna piss people off whichever way I go, and I'm not even sure. So if it guarantees playoffs, you have to do it because you're not guaranteed to win the Open Cup if you miss playoffs. And
Yeah.
we've been missing playoffs consistently. Like we missed the playoffs. We want to be back in there. Is this play-in game? If you get a home playoff game, like in San Jose, like I've been talking to the fans a lot. That's what everyone wants more than anything is a playoff game at home. Like people are obsessed with that concept. So if I'm gonna keep in mind what I think the people want, I'm gonna go. Yeah, you probably would throw that, but obviously that's not reality. You gave me a hypothetical, which magically, gives us something. I don't think I think people want to see us go in the Open Cup. I think people want to see us fight for that, but obviously in this scenario, I would probably pick to be guaranteed in the playoffs.
Saz?
I'm definitely gonna do playoffs because, like, all right, we get to the first round, but then we could get bounced in the second round. I feel like Open Cup for us is so special every year because we're so bad. It's like, oh my god, wait, an important game again, right? Now if we got near if we made a crazy Open Cup run, maybe that's something. And obviously we won it, right? That'd be insane. I think the goal the last couple of years for us has been like, can we make playoffs? Can we make playoffs? So just like feeling a playoff game, and I think Bruce probably has a little bit higher standards. Like winning a playoff game would probably be his. Obviously, still assessing the team and what the whole situation is, but yeah, no, I think a playoff game, rather than like a home playoff game, is definitely something I would take. And just to kind of harp back on that last point, that was just something I wanted to bring up, bringing Christian into it. But if you look statistically speaking, we're like number one in chance created, and like in Espinoza is like by far leading that stat as well. I don't completely quote me on that, but like, it's a ballpark. Um, at least I know it's somewhat close to that, and like we're really high on the chances created. So clearly we're getting opportunities, and clearly offense is like statistically working. It's just putting them away, and then like still figuring out not to leak goals. So if we were going to change around formation and change things, it would probably be more so for a defensive situation than an offensive situation right now. We have a good problem and so many good attackers. I think it was just trying to figure out how to get the defense because there's some games where it's like, oh, we're looking pretty good. There's some games where it's like same old MLS. And I do think our biggest problem right now are from last game. It would be just dumb mistakes, but the biggest one is that guy runs in. It's modern football, right? You run in, you get the cut back. The late runner comes in and taps it in. So applying a permanent six or something just to cover that, again, easier said than done, right? That then allows Hernan, I mean, even Oscar Verhoeven for the last couple of minutes of the 2 games ago, Nico, Bo, even Harks could go in between, or if you want to put him in that six, allowing them just to be a little more free while also coming back could open us up a little more in a good way versus opening us up to concede.
Yeah, I think that would be the perfect role if Mark Anthony Kaye is ever given a run as starter. I think the problem there is both Harks and LaRue have done so much positives, and even though they're not the same player as Mark Anthony Kaye, they fulfill different roles. So it's very interesting. There's options. We have depth. That is nice. We may not be so optimistic about our goalkeeper depth right now because it's tough for Earl Edwards Jr. But Daniel set such a high standard. But the reason I point out that hypothetical, if you were to choose one or the other, is I think for San Jose Earthquakes, this team is probably not going to make a deep run in both. Then I think if they go far in the U.S. Open Cup, it's going to detract from potentially making the playoffs. And if you want to make the playoffs, it might help if you don't do so well in the U.S. Open Cup, and then you're just focusing on Major League Soccer for the rest of the way. The drawback for that, of course, is some people were actually legitimately excited about participating in Leagues Cup, and who can blame them after San Jose Earthquakes did perform somewhat well in the Leagues Cup. That was like the shining moment of the season, being Necaxa 5-0, getting out of a group with both Galaxy and Chivas, and then you know, losing admirably in the round of 16. So, that being said, right now we're in ninth. If that was offered at the start of the season, we would have taken it, no questions asked. And right now, when you look at the other Bay Area teams, you have BFC surprisingly losing to Chicago Stars, formerly Chicago Red Star. The town is on a three-game losing streak to start their season, and a big part of that, of course, is a lot of the town graduates are now in the first team. So that'll take a while to replenish, and those players will improve as time goes on. And Oakland Roots, 6 games into their USL Championship season, they just won their first game. That was a bit of a surprise against a good FC Tulsa side, but they still only got 4 points to show for their efforts this season. So San Jose Earthquakes are the ones that are smashing their expectations the most out of the Bay Area teams. It doesn't feel like it right now, but they did outplay LAFC at times in that game. They had the better opportunities. They're generating a lot of good chances, and the best part about really the only good part that there was 4 games, 2 games in particular, we scored 4+ goals each, is that we're gonna have a positive goal difference for quite a while as long as we continue to have some good results here and there. And right now we have a polarized schedule, and in these last couple games we beat the team that we're supposed to beat, DC United, and earlier this season we beat teams we were supposed to beat, namely Sporting Kansas City and arguably Real Salt Lake. We lost to a team that most people would have expected us to lose to, LAFC. So now we go into the next part of our schedule. We are expected to beat Sporting Kansas City at home, given that we already beat them away. And then after that, we're expected to lose at Columbus. That's going to be a very tough game to get something at. And then if you continue that pattern, you could argue both Portland Timbers and even Colorado Rapids away. It would be great to have 4 points from that 6 before. We'll see what happens if Inter Miami. Of course, some funky things could happen with the players that show up to that game, it being midweek. But right now, I think the San Jose Earthquakes are middle of the pack team. They're beating the teams that they should be beating. They're losing to teams that you would probably expect them to. Even a Colorado Rapids team that maybe we're underestimating just a little bit, at least some parts of the community were, that they've gone on to beat a team that's off to a flying start this season. Last weekend they beat San Diego FC, so they're beating some good teams too. So with Sporting Kansas City, I think the expectations are hopefully that we will win. Portland Timbers scored 4 past them in the weekend that just passed. They play on the Sunday too, so if you care about rest, the Quakes will have 1 extra day of rest compared to Sporting Kansas City, but that's not a huge difference, I don't think. And right now, Sporting Kansas City are struggling to generate offense. They have Suleimanov, who's been their most productive winger, and then Joveljic, he had 1 penalty converted and had another penalty saved. So going to this game, this feels like a get-right opportunity for the Quakes, right, Abram?
Yeah, I mean, you were saying we're a middle of the pack team, and I was just thinking to myself how good it feels to finally be regular, like to just not be the worst team of all time. And Kansas City, you know, with all due respect, are kind of in a similar spot where they're kind of a normal team. You know, they we're not considering them for titles right now, but I wouldn't consider them, to be perennial wooden spoon winners either. So it's always nerve wracking to face them. I'm never we every time we face them, Ivan, we talk about like they seem to have our number when we play them. Just in terms of overall MLS lore, but with the if I'm looking at the two teams and I'm not looking at colors, I just look at the lineups. You know, we look like we should be able to beat them. And I think that we can. I think that you saw us lose this LAFC game. Every stat on the that's listed on Google, what I have in front of me, we're within four of every stat. That's including passes, 428 to 431. We had 431. Shots, we had 16 shots, they had 12 shots. It is very close, like I was saying. And that's not what you would expect from the Quakes, but, it does show that we put up a really good fight against a really good team. So I kind of expect us to, or I would hope that we could continue this form into a game against Sporting Kansas City at home, where we should, theoretically be even better. I don't see. There's no reason why we shouldn't do well in this match. Anything can happen, but if you wanted me to bet, I would bet that we do pretty well.
Yeah, I think that that's the expectation. It's weird to have expectations when you're San Jose Earthquakes fan, but it would be a very San Jose Earthquakes thing to be a team on the road, which is very difficult to do in Major League Soccer, and then lose to them at home. So it's like, okay, well, what was the point of all that effort? Of course, it doesn't work like that. It's not premeditated. It's just one of the quirks that can happen within soccer, and that's why it's very difficult to do the double on an opponent too, unless you're in a league where there's a stark contrast of the top teams and the bottom teams. Like you'd expect Real Madrid to do the double against Real Valladolid or something, but and another annoying thing is that you would expect that with there being 30 teams and there hasn't been any midweek MLS teams that everyone would still be on the same amount of games played, but Inter Miami and New England Revolution have a game in hand, and they don't seem to be playing against each other anytime soon. So that could be stuck there for a while. I believe that is a Wednesday, July 9th game. So we could be going another 3 months with almost everyone has played the same amount of games, and those two teams have played less. So, yeah, I gotta love scheduling quirks.
MLS
But
is weird like that.
absolutely. Uh, with Sporting Kansas City's setup and the way that they're performing as Portland Timbers, their attackers were the main productive outlets. Their midfield is very flawed. Their best player, Garcia, he played very well against us, but fans have been commenting in the Sporting Kansas City Reddit and stuff that he's frustratingly inconsistent, which is something that we've said about some of our past midfielders before, like Montero. And then their defense has been really bad. They've been hit with some injuries. They seem to be rotating players in and out. Some players like Ndembe, he's been hit with injuries in his past. They're playing Kyrie Shelton. I still don't believe it. I think he's been playing as a fullback for a while now, but I just don't. He feels weird in that position. And then their backup goalkeeper, Pulskamp, he's been waiting a long time to get this role from Tim Melia, but he's been struggling too. So, Saz, what do you make of Sporting Kansas City, especially now that they made the move away from Pierre Vermees?
Trash. No, I'm just kidding.
You're
I think,
right.
yeah,
You're right. You
yeah,
said no
yeah,
lies.
yeah. I think they're sort of in our boat last couple of years we've been in. Obviously, Peter Verbee's gone, so I think that actually is something that could be important. I think whenever there is a new coach, there is a sudden vast uptake in productivity. So, and you kind of saw that last game, winning their first game, right? Or first game without him. So we can see if that translates over to a second game and first road game, or if it goes on the low. One thing that has been said by me last week, and I just kind of want to build onto that, and it was something Ivan was already saying, was we beat the teams we were supposed to. We've lost to the teams we were supposed to. However, what I said, and I think we've actually, this is why I called it a good loss earlier. We've won pretty dang good versus the teams we should beat. Pretty good versus the teams we should beat. And we've lost pretty bad to the teams we should lose to. But this time around, this was a team a lot of people were looking at. We should lose to, and like I was saying, if you take away the score, and this is why I was saying all these things, it was a pretty close game. It was, and that's why I think it was a good loss, and why taking away the score was a little important. Is that's a step forward. We were in the game. It wasn't just like a, hey, we're a good team here, we're a bad team here. It's obvious what's going to happen. Like, oh, we fought for that a little bit. And with that being said, building on to this week, there's going to be games where there's surprises. You're going to suddenly lose versus the worst team in the league, or if it's us, the worst team in the league is suddenly going to beat a really good team. And I'm not saying we are the best, and I'm not saying we're the worst, and I'm not saying that Sporting Kansas is the best, but I'm also not saying they're the worst. But they're not the worst. Um,
They're
so
down there,
you
though. They're down
Yeah,
there.
exactly. So you take that into fact that we've been playing where we've been at, but we've taken that step forward. We're going to be at home. Are we going to ride that high? Are we going to be too confident? Is Sporting going to have the confidence of a new coach continue into another game? It is an away game. They did have a little bit less rest, as mentioned before. And not only is it 1 day less rest, it's actually less when you think about it, because, again, that traveling. Now, they don't have to travel as far, but still, you got to wake up, go over, adjust, go to training, like mentally draining at the very least. So I think that those are important things to take into. I'm still expecting a win. I would want to win, and a clean sheet would be sick, right? But we don't know where Daniel's at, and we'll see. This will be a real test, I think, for Edwards, or Earl, sorry. Uh, because this is going to be a
You
full
got it
game.
right,
Like, yeah,
Earl
Edward,
Edwards.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, Earl Edwards. Um, it'll be a good test for him because not as great as a team, but like we've said, good offensive threats. It's kind of like the Earthquakes, where it's like, oh, you know, it's coming, but Christian Espinosa is going to run at you. So you got that going for them. So this will be, I think, it'll be a surprisingly fun game in the sense of like maybe not like I was talking about Giroud, where it's like, wow, look at this tactical side of it. Even if he didn't do this and this, he really got to pick the brain. It was more of like, let's see what happens.
Uh, yeah, I think that for me, my TikTok take is that the win condition is score three or more goals. I think that that's something you can do with this porous back line, and you just have to be as assertive as we know they can be. I think the way that they play against DC now, you're not going to score 6 goals every game, but they were able to score in quick succession. They were able to take advantage of the opportunities. They were opportunistic. So I'm hoping that they can sense that this is a game that they can get 3 points out of, and then that gives them that cushion. You can play with a little bit more freedom against Columbus Crew, thinking no one expects us to get anything here in the state of Ohio, but now we're going to figure it out, and who knows, maybe we can surprise people. So that's what I think needs to happen. Deal with this polarized part of the schedule, take care of business, and then we'll see what happens in the games that you need a little bit extra from to get a result. And looking at Saturday's lineup, a few games I wanted to point out if you want to make it a doubleheader with the San Jose Earthquakes. Maybe listen to it on your ride home, or if you're the passenger, you can watch it on your ride to the game, I should say. Big one, of course, Charlotte versus San Diego at 4:30 p.m. And then another one I want to highlight, Philadelphia Union versus Atlanta United, because there's a pretty big trade that happened in Major League Soccer where Daniel Gazdag, who is Philadelphia Union's all-time top goal scorer, is now traded to the Columbus Crew. So they're continuing to find ways to replace the goal productivity of Cucho Hernandez, and that should solve any lingering issues that they had. And that's going to make for some fiery Hell is Real derbies between Gazdag and Evander there. So, yeah, good on Columbus Crew, but I'm trying to think of what a West Conference equivalent would look like. It would be like if Portland Timbers still had Evander, and then all of a sudden they traded them to LA Galaxy or LAFC. We would be pissed if that happened.
It's like if the San Jose Earthquakes had Landon Donovan and decided to trade him to LA Galaxy.
Oh, no.
Imagine.
Yeah, I mean, that's ancient history now. Like, we're in the timeline now where Landon Donovan's a shill for, Wells Fargo and the Mexican national team. uh, So, this is going to be an exciting game for the prospects of what the Quakes can pull off. And there's also some more exciting games going to PayPal Park. So the USA were drawn in a Gold Cup group with Haiti, Saudi Arabia, and Trinidad and Tobago. And Trinidad and Tobago is going to be coming to San Jose for that game at PayPal Park in the group stage. A bit of a downer right now with the U.S. men's national team because, of course, they had a very bad showing in the Nations League, losing to both Canada and Panama. So this is the last opportunity for all three World Cup hosts next year to play competitive games. So similarly with our expectations for USA versus Sporting Kansas City, if if San Jose Earthquakes versus Sporting Kansas City, if USA can play similarly against Trinidad and Tobago at PayPal Park, now that would be a treat for sure. Depending on Gold Cup prices, if you're not too keen on what the World Cup prices might look like, Gold Cup might be your best opportunity to watch some international soccer. Other than when U.S. women's national team they had a 2-1 loss to Brazil the other night in a friendly. So we're getting a lot of great opportunities to watch soccer here in the Bay Area, right, fellas?
Yeah, I mean, and it's not even just at the top. I love like what Abel's doing right now with El Farolito. Like I love following the smaller teams and also just like going getting to go to those games and seeing the culture kind of like it's still in its infancy at that level. It's like there's people there, but it's not like you wouldn't see like a crazy amount of people there. But the passion still it carries and no, it's just I am so happy to be a journalist at this time to get to see the rise of soccer in the United States. At the limited capacity that I do, I'm no Tom Bogert, but it is magical, and sometimes I tear up thinking about it just because of how much I love soccer and how much it was neglected my whole life growing up, and how I was always the soccer guy. Like he likes soccer. He doesn't like football, basketball, like whatever. Soccer is my thing. It always will be, and so it's been incredible to see the rise and where it's come from when I was a kid.
I fear that inviting you to play basketball with my friends and I might have made you like basketball even less.
Uh, well, so the thing is, when you're trying to score a layup, and Ivan is standing over you, I'm 5'10". Ivan, when you
6'4" on a bad day, Ivan. Yeah.
when you're playing
6'2".
basketball against him, he seems 7'2". So it's just I just pass it. Uh, but no, it is fun. I do enjoy it. I feel like I'm playing goalkeeper and getting the rebounds, having to go up for the ball, keeper. You know what I mean? No, it's a lot of fun, but it never is like you saw me having the time of my life when we played soccer. Even though I did get injured, I really I love soccer.
Don't worry. Rest assured that I do get humbled from time to time when I do my weekend morning pickup basketball at the 24-hour fitness in Pleasanton.
That makes me feel better.
All right. I think that's going to conclude our episode. Any last thoughts on Sounds Earthquakes right now, or any reminders that you'd like to give, Saz?
I want a tectonic take from y'all. Does Benji make the 18?
Hmm.
I mean, sorry, I'll let you go, Ivan.
I think that Benji Kikanovic is going to make the 18 when he's healthy, just so Bruce Arena can see what he looks like in warm ups and to consider how he could best utilize him off the bench. Now, I'm not sure if that means that someone like a Preston Judd might be dropped for a game, but it's a good problem to have with Judd now being a contributor off the bench. Uh, we're gonna have to see what we got with Benji Kikanovic, though, especially if he's gonna have a future beyond this season here at San Jose.
No, I mean Benji, from what I recall, is like San Jose born and bred. Like he's been here for a while, and or maybe he's from Sacramento. It doesn't matter. I don't care.
Sacramento, but yeah.
Yeah, close. They both start with an S. It's fine. Um, but no, it doesn't matter because he has so much passion when he plays. I think that he, in my opinion, he fits what Bruce likes in a player. And he has a good mix of physicality, pace, also just determination, and also a bit of technique. He can move with the ball, you know, pretty much just as good as anyone else. So I think that I think this might be early. He is off of the injury report. Like he's not listed as having injury anymore, so that's always good to see. But it's difficult to predict what where he actually is in training because we don't get to see that. So if he's like playing well in training, then Bruce is gonna make the decision off of that. Um, so it's hard to predict, but I think once he is up and running, like because if we just assume he's at 100% physical health, then I think that Bruce would really like to have him on the bench at the very least. Over probably like someone like Nick Lima. I know that he's not a fullback, but I think that that might be one of the guys who would, because I can't think of anyone else. Judd is a pure forward, and Benji is kind of more than that. You know what I mean?
That's a good point. I hadn't considered that. For some reason, I still have this vision of Benji Kikanovic as a potential forward option, but yeah, he's kind of a hybrid. I do question though that if he doesn't get too much opportunities off the bench, uh, how happy will he be to stay long term here at San Jose Earthquakes, and if he's not getting more playing time? But we gotta walk before we can run, and we gotta see how he performs when he comes back from injury. Because right now we've got so many players making a positive case, particularly on offense, to get more involved. And yeah, it's a good problem to have. The San Jose Earthquakes have depth, and that's a positive note to end things for this episode. So go Quakes!